Walking a path along the roots of Pikes Peak, you take a fork in the road to the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Inside is a raucous conversation on the arts, faith, and, wait a minute, is this the bad place? At a table in the corner by the fire are three people. One of them is explaining all the ways that Chidi is uncomfortably similar to himself. And that's me, Matthew Mellema, and welcome to Believe to See. We're a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. The Anselm Society is a coalition of churches across the Front Range of Colorado dedicated to a renaissance of the Christian imagination. To find out more about what we're about and to learn about our latest project, Why We Create, please visit us at anselmsociety.org. And of course, please rate and review this show at iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Helps us out a ton. And for today's topic, we are about to embark on a new month of content here. As I mentioned a little bit before, Anselm is doing a Why We Create series, looking at our role as sub-creators in God's created order. And this is whether you are a writer, a visual artist, or if you're not, you don't think of yourself as an artist per se, but you view yourself as a human who, wants to live a good human life. So to look at our overall topic, Why We Create, we're going to look at a subtopic each month and really focus on it. The theme of this month, the month of May, is enchantment. So by enchantment, we mean a whole lot more than what you're probably thinking, unless you're the Anselm type, and then you probably already know. But anyway, here's how we describe it on our website. There is no heaven and earth as we've commonly come to understand them. Harps and clouds on the one hand and unimportant physical matter on the other. Earth is charged with the grandeur of God, and we can learn to see his character and his workmanship crackling through every fiber of the world we live in. So that's what we mean by enchantment. We're especially going to look at it this month through the lens of Tolkien, fairy stories, and things like that, which you will see more to come. But right now, we want to take a small slice of that and discuss it in more detail here at the Roundtable. And in particular, we want to talk about heaven and earth as we've commonly come to understand them. The very thing that Anselm said does not exist in the way we understand it. But I think there's a lot of stuff there. So specifically, we want to talk about depictions of the afterlife, specifically heaven, in art, whether it's great art or it's everyday art, whether it's movies, film, whatever. What are the ways that people talk when we're talking about heaven? Now, to set the scene, I want to read the opening from this introduction I have. Because I'm an Anselm member, of course, my translation of Dante's Divine Comedy is by Anthony Esselin. And I was reading his introduction to Paradise. And I was like, well, there we go. This is kind of what I've been feeling, only in a more erudite and we're about same level of grumpy. Well, I'll let you readers be the judge there. In a dark and superstitious age, with even the memory of learning fading like a dream, when the cultural conditions of life prevent most people from deriving real pleasure from the simple duties of home and family and village, men's vain imaginations invent for themselves another world. They project into that world what little they know of this one, imagining a God like a great and kindly old man who forgives their failings unconditionally and allows them to continue in their present pastimes, to fish, to hunt, to gossip with friends, to lounge in the sun at the side of a lake. Such a God is a wonderfully convenient balm to their bruised hearts and egos. For in this world of ours, man is terribly small, born in pain, living through trouble and heartache, and dying in doubt or despair. Men cry not so much to be made whole and good as to be let off the hook, to get away without dying, and so they attribute magical powers, even on this side of the grave, to cards, stones, powders, herbs, and ointments, reducing the almighty creator of the universe to an easily manipulable force, to a tool like a stock or a stone. And then he transitions to talking about how Dante does it better, which is true. But I think that also gets at a lot of what we were talking about in the green room. The green room is podcast talk for what we talk about before we hit the record button. But joined here by my co-hosts, Evangeline Denmark and Mandy Hauk. So hello, Evangeline.
Hello.
Hello, Mandy.
Hello.
So when we were talking off air, I think one of the big themes we were discussing is how hard it was to come up with examples. Is that right, Mandy?
Yeah. I when we first talked about doing this topic, I thought, oh, sure. I thought I would have lots of ideas.
And this was your idea.
This was my idea because I thought there's a wealth of, examples from which to draw. But then when it came down to actually thinking of them, it was harder than I anticipated.
I think that maybe that's because it's so ubiquitous, the idea that's presented in film. Mm-hmm. You've seen it so many times that you almost can't put your finger on it.
Right.
Yeah, we have the cultural shorthand of it's the clouds and the harps and the golden gates, and there's like the sun in the background, and it's very bright.
Right.
St. Peter letting you in or not letting you in. Yeah.
And God is typically just a voice or a light.
True.
And then, of course, in like Evan Almighty or Oh God, which was a George Burns movie from the 70s. My children who have no idea what I'm talking about. In both of those, because Morgan Freeman was God in Evan Almighty, right? Am I correct?
Yes.
So it was
Bruce Almighty.
And Bruce Almighty.
Which
is arguably better.
That is true. Yeah. In both of those cases, God was very human. Mm-hmm. And Morgan Freeman was very, nattily dressed and smooth. So it's very different from, not only is it different from the medieval depictions in that you can see him, but he looks like one of us, just a snappier dresser.
Just a slob like one of us.
Yes, there you go.
To quote the 90s song that Matt does, because I'm older than Matt.
Yeah.
So you probably don't
remember I know that song.
You know that. It was inescapable. For a few years.
It was, unfortunately.
I'm very, very flattered that you all think I'm like the young one. I need to relish this while I can.
Okay, enjoy.
But I think I had a similar experience because, we threw out the idea. We're like, yes, that's a great idea. Let's do it. Then we all try to come up with examples. Okay, examples of heaven done well. Okay, skip that. Examples of heaven done poorly. There's there we go. Lots of stuff. So let's go through some of the examples of heaven done poorly. Let's go through some different examples we have. Then we'll try to, as a group, really hash it out, see if we can find some themes that they have in common. And then if we can, maybe we can find heaven done well. Maybe. And then looking ahead, listeners, this is the roadmap of the show. I'd like us all to brainstorm on if we were to portray heaven, let's say we're all combining to do a screenplay about something that takes place in heaven, how would we do it? Right. Okay, I sprung that on you 2 seconds before we started recording, but there we go.
Did.
All right, so Mandy, let's start with bad examples of heaven. So what was your first bad example of heaven?
Well, I realize this is sort of we're going to have a lot of spoilers here.
That's
spoiler.
True.
Spoiler alert. You talked about The Good Place, and I adore The Good Place as a show, but let's be honest. The idea that heaven and hell are that similar and there's almost no discernible difference between the good place and the bad place, and it's all confusing about where they really are, is, I would say, done poorly from a serious perspective. It's still a great show.
Let's give a big spoiler alert for everyone, because The Good Place is fantastic. So if you have not seen it, maybe skip ahead a few minutes.
Yeah, fast forward.
And then go back and watch The Good Place, because it's super, super good. And there are great twists that I don't want to spoil, but I'm giving you the chance here. So if you just plow right through this, you only have yourself to blame. But yes, Mandy, I totally agree with you, the broad strokes there. Evangeline, your thoughts on, big thoughts on heaven and The Good Place.
Okay. Yeah, The Good Place strikes me as, this long, slow, but entertaining teasing out of moral and ethical dilemmas. And what is the question that they kind of encapsulate it? What do we owe to each other? Which is a really interesting human question.
Right.
And I think worth exploring, and The Good Place does it very well. And I, love that show. But, that is all taking place after these characters have passed through, supposedly gone on. And I don't know, I kind of would hope that there would be a little more certainty beyond, that
that's
we would
a good
not
point.
Still be unraveling the human condition. But in a way, that's all we have. Is our own human understanding. So in that way, it makes sense.
Well, that actually reminds me of a conversation I had with my college roommate. I don't remember why, but we were talking about some big question, some big theological question.
We all remember college.
Yes, exactly. And one of us said, we started wondering, when we get to heaven, are we going to know everything as soon as we get there and we'll just understand it all immediately? Or will there be like, no, I'm not sorry. It's funny. Okay, never mind. I retract.
Wow.
We were on the planning committee of several retreats because my roommate and I were ministry people. And so we were talking about it like that. So we were like, or will heaven be like one giant retreat and there will be like breakout sessions and seminars and like David on why music matters to God. And now go over to Paul and he'll finally explain what he meant by predestination or not. Right. And so, but yeah, that's a question we had. Do we just arrive at heaven and we understand everything, or do we have to learn it? And so that just reminded me of that, because I hadn't thought of that on The Good Place. Like, here they are still trying to figure out how to be quote unquote good people, which really isn't how you get into heaven in the first place. But the fact that
was excellent, correct theology there, Mandy.
Thank you. But the fact that they would be doing it not on earth when it would actually matter to the people they encounter in their lives is interesting.
It's all we have.
Yeah.
And in every like example that is now coming to mind, I keep seeing that we have only done what we can wrestle with our human understanding. And I don't know, we can I was thinking on the way over, I was listening to the song Just Like Heaven by The Cure. And thinking about the movie Just Like Heaven, which has Reese Witherspoon and
Napoleon Dynamite.
And Napoleon Dynamite and Mark Ruffalo, which is a really good movie. And then this ties into other examples that we have. It's about two people being separated supposedly by life and death and then coming together at the end. And it's just interesting that that's all we have. And we can continue talking about that right now or later or whatever. But yeah, I just keep thinking, coming back to that. That's what we want, and that's how we wrestle with the idea of heaven, is people being separated from each other and then coming back together and being with each other. Anyway, sorry, went off on a tangent.
No, you went off on a tangent on one of the more, that is the heaven stuff done in a more interesting way, or potentially interesting. Well,
and you know what? That actually touches on something that is very true about God. And that is, the fact that he's a Trinity is the God we know and worship that created us is community. His very nature is community. Yeah. And so the fact that even secular, unbelieving people come down to the pain of being separated from loved ones, that's actually pretty meaningful.
And the joy of coming together. And the joy. That is our best, I'm jumping ahead. It's that is our best idea. The best way that we can conceive of heaven is being together with
reunited
people that we love.
Absolutely.
And
it's not a bad thing.
And you can see both of those aspects in The Good Place, because like you both said, let's get the caveats here. One, The Good Place is an amazing show. I love it. Two, it's designed to be an exploration of ethics in moral situations. It's not designed to be a treatise on the afterlife. So it's not trying to do that.
Right.
But with that said, you can see it in the first season and in the final season. The first season, spoiler alert, skip this if you haven't listened to it. We were led to believe it's The Good Place. And it's sort of this cute little town square where the people all live in these fancy mansions and they have all this fancy food. Yeah, and they all have magical frozen yogurt. And again, it's done for comedy. But you can see it's okay, here, what can I imagine a good life being? Oh, living in a fancy town square with cool people, and I can eat whatever I want. Okay, cool. So that's a heaven. It's basically things I like in the real world, only slightly shinier.
And with no consequences.
Yes. Then when you go forward to season 4, the final season, again, spoiler alert, the actual Good Place, I thought that was really fascinating because they spend 3 3/4 seasons trying to get to the actual good place.
Mm-hmm.
Then they finally get there. They finally decided like, yeah, y'all can stay. Cool, you did it. And then what is the good place? It's just a series of entertaining events. It's basically the world, only slightly shinier with no consequences, and you have a little bit more control. So you live in a fancy house, you eat fancy food, you can play cool video games if you want, but that's kind of it. And I think it's significant that the final episode of the series is them all kind of getting over it and deciding to just end it all in a artistically, mostly satisfying way. But that's kind of it. It shows, to me, it showed, at least in part, the limits of having that view of heaven. It's just basically like taking what we see on Earth and extrapolating, making it shinier. And yeah, you would get bored of that after a few million years, no matter how good it is.
Well, and it's like experiences. They go from different, like even like through time and different places but it's on Earth. I don't remember if there was any, it's been a while, extra like terrestrial, like planetary stuff. I don't
think so.
No.
I remember different, them going to different places in time and on the Earth.
They can do that.
And experiencing that. And then they got to the point where they had experienced everything. And I mean, we think, oh, how cool would it be to have all the time to read all the books in the world and to go, climb all the mountains and see every single tree.
Ford every stream.
Yeah.
Sorry, you said climb every mountain. Sorry.
And, because we're finite and that's what we think.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's the best we can do.
It's the best we can do. It's like we keep coming back to that. But how sad if that was all there was.
Right. It's just it's earthbound. It's limited by their imagination, our imagination.
Yeah,
exactly.
like you can see, like even in their perfect utopia, like they still sleep, they still go out and eat, they still have all these other stuff, they're still bound and all this physical stuff. And like the best they can do, I'm not sure we can do better.
No.
It's basically a shinier version of the world that extends forever.
There's no limit. There's no limit.
Yeah. No matter how happy you make that, you can kind of view that little sense of dread after a while.
Yeah, because even though they're trying to portray it as limitless, but it's limited because everything is defined by, and the reference point is Earth.
Yeah, there was that. Do you remember it was the episode before the final one when they get to the good place and they realize all these good people are kind of zombie bots because they can drink this milkshake of like infinite stellar pleasure, and it just floods their minds with all good feelings, and there's no need to do anything else. So it's like, oh, again, that's the limits of our imagination there. But
which is funny because that's basically a Brave New World.
Yeah.
I was thinking it was Wall-E.
Well, that too. But they all had
breath.
consequences for their actions because they're all But in the Brave New World, that sort of like drug yourself into mindless, quote unquote, pleasure is torturous, really, in a Brave New World.
Yeah, it is weird. Like when given the concept of all we'll do is flood you to the max with pleasure, nonstop forever. That. The first time you hear it, it kind of sounds like heaven, but when you give it 2 seconds, it's like, no, this is the bad place.
Right, it is, yeah.
So, that is the good place. Any other thoughts on the good place's portrayal of the afterlife? Other than you all should watch The Good Place because it's absolutely fantastic.
It's hilarious. And the way that they do twists, this is just about how good it is. It's not about, but at the end of every season, I would think they have nowhere to go. They've run out of story, and then whoa, no, they haven't, and they flip it.
Oh, I'm gonna win some cheap points here, and then I'm gonna pivot topics very drastically. So the showrunner for that show, Mike Schur, he also did SNL stuff. He wrote for The Office. He launched Parks and Rec. So then he did The Good Place, and one of the things he had in mind is he was always writing a season ahead. So before they started filming, he had all the episodes of season 1 completely planned out.
Wow.
Outline.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons why it works so well. Yes. Like the twist at the end of season 1, it's so perfect.
Because it was planned. I see you. Yeah.
We'll give him this, won't we?
Yeah. because I write literary fiction. There's no twist in my literary fiction.
Mike Schur had this great line. I watched.
Now no one's going to read it ever.
I watched a YouTube video. It was like a Mike Schur interview. He was like, "Yeah, good fiction. The ending should be at the same time surprising and inevitable, where they take the audience by surprise. When they go back and see it, they can see it's actually all been building up to that."
Okay, well,
in season 1, that's absolutely what they did, and they knocked it out of the park.
I will say, I know certain points along the way. So the way I would describe how I write is, and I stole it from a lecture I saw at it was a seminar, not in heaven, but on Earthbound seminar.
Seminars.
Yeah, Carol Berg. She talked about the way she doesn't outline, but what she would do is she would sort of have in mind a destination, sort of like you're on a road trip, but you haven't planned all of your stops and you're not sure like what the weather will be like when you get to the end and things like that. So I know in general where I'm going, but
right.
I just,
Mike Schur, I'm sure you're listening to this. And the greatness of your season 1 outline has just made Mandy defensive about her writing practice. So that's a win. That is a win.
Shots fired.
But another one, while we're talking about the limits of our imagination, I think some examples that really hit me were, these aren't movies I've seen, but I've gotten the gist of it. Mom, it's important for you to know, Mom, I've not seen these movies. Okay. First one is Sausage Party, and the second one is This Is the End. They are both Seth Rogen movies.
Okay, what does Sausage Party have to do with heaven?
Well.
Okay, go ahead.
I've not seen either of these either.
Yeah,
I wouldn't recommend them. But
I actually missed the second one because my brain was stuck on Sausage Party. What was the other?
So This Is the End. It's sort of a comedy apocalypse movie. It has a lot of celebrities in it. Where the premise is it's the end of the world, and at the end, here's where we tie back in. They go to heaven, and it's Seth Rogen's view of heaven. And they go there, and heaven is shiny, and everyone's wearing white shiny clothes. But basically, it's a lot of hot people having basically a dance party, and there's all the drugs and sex that you could ever want. And that is Seth Rogen's idea of heaven.
Well,
and it's similar in Sausage Party, where he has sort of goes off on that. And basically, heaven is sensual fulfillment, maxed out all the time. And Seth Rogen is not a religious person, clearly, but
I think they tried that in Haight-Ashbury in 1967. I don't know.
So you're saying it wouldn't work in real life?
I don't think so.
But it gets to it's kind of a crasser version of it, but it gets to the same point where what's the best thing? I picture like Seth Rogen, like what are the best things in the world? Mm-hmm. Sex and drugs. Okay, cool. So that's what my heaven is about. It's just all of that all the time as much as I want. And again, that's just the limits of his imagination. I think a lot of us, even if we're trying to imagine stuff, it's going to be something like that. It's all these sensual things that we enjoy. It's like, well, let's crank it up to 10, and that's heaven. And that just falls very, very short. Mm-hmm. And it gets for very unsatisfying fiction.
I think it's what I'm hearing, the theme I think we keep running into is limitless and no consequences. Mm-hmm. Mm. So that's the best that an earthbound imagination can come up with.
Which ironically is very limited.
Yes.
Yeah, there's a Calvin and Hobbes comic where Calvin's talking with Hobbes about like, so in heaven it's supposed to be really good, but I like to be bad, so if I can't be bad, would I enjoy heaven? And then the last panel is like, maybe heaven's a place where you're allowed to be bad.
Oh, that's so
Which
funny.
again, that's basically the Seth Rogen or kind of the Good Place version of it.
Well,
right?
And there's a Dixie Chick song where it's like celebrating, it's I'm going to hell on a sin wagon. Because basically the whole idea that's where it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun in hell because we all get to party with our bad friends.
Yeah, I was about to say there's that, you know, stereotype or whatever, that common thought that, you know, I'm going to go to hell and be with all my friends, or I'm going to, you know, go and that's where there's going to be fun. But again, that's bringing in the idea of community.
That's true.
You know, that's where all my friends are going to be. Well, A, that's sad. B, what are you saying right there in that statement? That you want to be with your friends, that you want community, which I think is an important, if, flawed.
Right, because they're really seeking love.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be there in hell. So.
Yep, and
interesting.
Yeah, so that is sort of the other side of the coin, where it's the concept of heaven as being with someone, being reunited with someone, which I think on the scale of goodness, it's not ideal, but it is definitely better, right? Like it's a much more acceptable version of it. And you can see this going back to The Good Place, where at various points, the characters are given a choice, especially the four main human characters are given the choice, or supposedly given the choice where, hey, you all can go to the good place. You just need to ditch this one friend who's going to the bad place. And one of the marks of their moral growth is that, no, we're not going to abandon our friend, even if it means we don't go to the good place, right? And that's obviously seen as a laudable thing because it's the theme of, community, being with people, how
sacrifice.
Yeah, so Mandy or Evangeline, do you have any examples of heaven along those lines? Heaven being with the loved one, which is definitely a step up in the hierarchy from heaven being sensual desires cranked up to 10.
Well, you and I both, our brains went to What Dreams May Come, a Robin Williams movie from the 90s, which is about separation and then ultimately coming together again. And so how long has it been? It's been a while since I've seen that movie. And now I'm kind of like, I think I need to go see it again.
I haven't seen it at all. And if I could just apologize to the listeners if they hear my animals, because they are...
never apologize for Winston.
Winston and Lewis both are experiencing a separation anxiety. So they keep whining.
Love us.
So anyway, just to stick with the theme, if you hear them crying, it's just they're agreeing with us that's what the goal is, to be together.
They just desire community.
Yes. Anyway,
So anyway, I was thinking about the movie What Dreams May Come, and sort of one of the portrayals is, kind of something that we artists would probably include in our own imagination, is the character goes to heaven, and it is one of the things he sees is that is like one of his wife's paintings. It is like being in one of her paintings, which is unique and cool. And
I've seen the advertisements for it, and now they make sense to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And very beautiful, and includes pieces of our imagination, which is something that takes it a step beyond just sensual pleasures as art. Okay. Yeah. But, the problem, of course, is that he is separated from his wife. And so he ends up going to hell, I think, to try and rescue her. And it wraps up, spoiler alert, because this is another portrayal
Mandy
that we
is saying
see
she's
often.
interested in seeing the movie, and here you go. If you want to plug your
No,
ears,
that's all right.
Okay.
It sounds like it's worth seeing.
Yeah, it is worth seeing,
even if you know what's happening.
But this is probably a conclusion that you would have come to anyway, that you would see this coming, is that they decide that they are going to be reincarnated as children and live life again together.
The husband and wife?
Yes.
Aww.
Which is, I know, but also that, again, we see that portrayed a lot. Why do we see that idea of reincarnation, specifically being reincarnated so that you can live life again with someone that you love?
Right.
It's because, again, that's as far as we can go. Maybe prove me wrong.
Right.
That's as far as we can go when it comes to imagining or getting even close to heaven. Maybe.
Yeah. It was one of those things where I was looking, I did kind of a deep dive. So that the movie What Dreams May Come is based on a book that was written in the 1970s. The book was written by a guy who's kind of into new agey stuff. So you can see the worldview, I think, results in something that I think maybe by accident gets some things right, but it still falls short in a lot of ways. So one of the things I thought they did in sort of an interesting, maybe accidentally right way, is how so much of the world of the afterlife is determined by the character's own imagination. Like you said, I thought that was really interesting how heaven is inside one of his wife's paintings. It's sort of this his own imagination projected. The visual effects, this is 1998, back in the day. They're actually pretty impressive. They do a good job like cranking up the colors, making everything seem hyper real. That's cool. And also, on the flip side of that, his wife is in hell for a while, and the explanation is she doesn't even realize she's there. It's her own imagination. It's her own guilt. She's tormenting herself with it. And that is actually kind of accidentally in keeping with big strand of Christian theology. It's like, yeah, hell is locked from the inside, and it's really the soul turned in on itself. And
good point.
Yeah, she ends up, again, spoiler alert, but you know this already, listeners. She comes back out at the end with Robin Williams, and they are together. And again, like you said, Evangeline, that's about as good as we can imagine it, right? You're in heaven, the best thing you can imagine with your one true love. All right, cool. But the fact that they reincarnate at the end, that seems to be a tacit admission, like, yeah, even this isn't enough, right? Let's just go for round 2 of life.
Well, and I think they probably forgot that life is not, that fun.
Well, that brings up the way that I was raised and kind of sort of picked up that idea of heaven is, everything is perfect there. We go there and we are perfect and everything else is perfect. And so it wasn't until I got actually to Anglicanism that I really thought about and was sort of confronted with the idea of heaven breaking through. And I don't know if you want to go here yet, but heaven being constantly breaking through into this world and this world being made perfect. And that's something to wrestle with. Like I said, I don't know if we're ready to go there yet, but I was always given that impression that that there was perfect and here in life. And what it sort of does is negate, in a way, the good things about life.
Yes.
And so, here we are saying, well, this is the limits of what we can imagine. Well, what if we could look at the good things like community,
right,
in life, and kind of see that with a heaven focus as heaven breaking through? What would that do? Would that change our ability to conceive of it?
Yeah, there's a richness in it that we overlook.
We miss because we're like, this is just what we have now. But hey, it's a little bit of heaven now.
Abundant life.
Yep. Oh, you guys are looking at me. I put my pen to my chin and looked up thoughtfully, contemplating what Evangeline was talking about.
That means someone else.
So that implied that I was going to speak next.
Yes, it did.
So I will.
Okay.
And I want to get into the good portrayals of heaven, but first, I just want to this sort of imaginary scaffolding. I think it's really hard to escape. It's the clouds and all that stuff. And it happens all the time. And like, okay, well, this is a silly example, but I'm going to make a defense of my silly example because I think a lot of times you get the best idea of what like the knee-jerk reaction of the culture is based on sort of the crappy art. Like not the stuff that's trying to say something profound. It's like, we need to throw this movie together. What's a simple message everyone will understand? Okay, cool. That's a good way to get, like, what's the zeitgeist right now?
Right.
So I'm looking back to the 1990-something film, All Dogs Go to Heaven.
Oh! I didn't even think of that one.
So this one, I watched it when I was really little. I remembered none of it, so I had to rewatch the heaven scene again. But it's a dog who dies, thinks he dies too soon. He goes up to heaven, and it's, I don't know, I guess dogs and humans are the same heaven. But they say all dogs go to heaven because dogs are, okay, whatever.
Pure.
But it's all, they do a reasonably good job showing like the clouds and the gates and everything. And even then, their point about heaven was, it's boring because you know what to expect. Everything's perfect all the time. And this dog likes the unexpected. So that's why he goes back to Earth. So again, it's not a great piece of art, but I think that kind of does, it kind of summarizes a lot of the problems we just discussed, right? So like it's sort of this sloppy attempt, like, okay, everything's perfect. they make a point like it's the perfect temperature all the time. You get all the food you want. It's great. It's everything a dog could want all the time. And then it's shown, again, kind of in a facile way that, oh, this isn't really satisfying.
Right.
So now let's get to, do we have examples of portrayals of heaven that are satisfying?
I think okay, I have two answers, but I'll start with, anyway, sorry. Okay. I think
you're giving all these like really tantalizing things today, Mandy. It's like, here's a story. Oh, I really should. No, I
won't. I think The Last Battle.
Okay. Yep.
And then also, spoiler alert, have you read Peace Like a River yet?
I haven't, Mandy. This is my fault.
Yes, it is.
Okay, listeners, just so y'all know, Mandy assigned Peace Like a River. I started reading it. It's great. Like, I acknowledge the greatness of it. They got into a legal problem that I thought they described inaccurately. So as a lawyer, it bugged me and I stopped reading.
I know, but I assigned you after that to read past that.
Okay, you're right.
Seriously, the court stuff is like, what, 2 pages, 5 at the most. Everything else is, they don't go back to court.
I really thought they misapprehended the concept of attempted murder and justifiable. Okay, anyway.
Right. You can message Leif Enger on Instagram. He's on there. I'm sure he'd love to hear your argument. Anyway, but spoiler alert, I won't say who goes to heaven, but someone goes to heaven in Peace Like a River. And it's actually pretty similar to the depiction of The Last Battle, where it's just incredible, indescribable beauty. And there's the further up and further in, there's that sense in Peace Like a River also. And obviously there's a river and it's peaceful. That's not too much of a spoiler. But I think the focus on not how are we spending our time, which seems to be the preoccupation of everything we've been talking about before. You get to...
There's a Far Side comic where an angel in heaven looks over at the other angel's like, I wish I'd brought a magazine. Yeah.
But the depictions in The Last Battle and Peace Like a River are, like I said, more about beauty and wonder. And the writers, Leif Enger and, of course, C.S. Lewis, both seem to be attempting to let the reader's imagination take over and just expand as much as humanly possible and understand that it's beyond what we can imagine, if that makes sense. So I think those are two of the better ones, but I think the best one is probably Paradise, just because it's so confusing. Dante's Paradise, because it's so confusing. And I think, I mean, he did that intentionally because he knew he wouldn't be able to describe it because it's beyond our capability to understand.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think Last Battle does, I think, a good job, which when we're talking about a subject like this, saying you do a good job is pretty high praise. And I think a couple of things that C.S. Lewis does well is, one, he really focuses on the inner state of the human characters as they're entering heaven. There's big scenes like, hey guys, I can't possibly feel anxious right now. Try. And everyone's like, you're right, I can't feel anxious either.
Oh, I forgot that. Yeah.
I thought that was a nice little bit. And then the talking about how the things you love on earth are just sort of an echo of the things that, like, the unicorn, I think at one point says, hey, if I ever loved Narnia, it's because it was just a little itty bitty bit like this.
Right.
And, that's sort of a theme that he plays out a lot. And then finally, he portrays the eternal state, not as just a series of moments, like a line extending forward forever, but as a story in a narrative that keeps going. So I think those are some of the elements to me that he does well in Evangeline. Any thoughts to add on Last Battle, or if you did your homework, unlike me, in Peace Like a River? I'm sorry, Mandy.
I think I was absent the day that Peace Like a River was assigned. So I get a pass.
No, it was the pub night when y'all were stealing my people from my pub table, and he stole Leif Enger.
Oh, wow.
And
yeah, we are late on that assignment. No, I was thinking while you were talking about what was it, the line about the unicorn?
Oh yeah, if ever I loved Narnia, it's because it was
yeah. I was just thinking about I feel like Tolkien shows it by shadowing it, in the beauty of the elves and kind of the sadness that all of that is veiled by, their beauty is passing out of the world. And so what once was there is not there, or is not the same. Right. And I almost think that for me, that's more acceptable in a way than trying to really describe perfection, is to describe its shadow.
Yeah, and I think a common theme we're getting here with some of these authors who did it more effectively is they were kind of upfront about how inadequate of a job they were going to do. So they sort of sketched some of the parameters and it was like, y'all need to take it from here. I can't do all this.
Exactly.
And in most cases, that would be poor writing. But in this case, I think that's the proper way to do it.
Right. And because of the caliber of the writer, it works.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
And similar thing with Dante. Now, the thing with Paradise, I know with me, I can get into the Inferno because it's, it's interesting and stuff. I can get into Purgatory. Paradise is kind of tougher for me to deal with.
Well, yeah.
Just because, and I think that's kind of a sentiment a lot of folks share, just because, well, Mandy, you taught this for years. So did you have similar experience like with your students, like Inferno? Okay, it's cool. The tortures are kind of interesting. Purgatory, there's the trajectory of the soul, right, going forward. But you can explain this better than me. What did you see from your students?
They just wanted to read Inferno. They thought it was awesome because it was gross. And I remember they loved the chewing of they, it was high school students. Anyway, we were all collectively confused by Paradise, but we all agreed that was his intent. And so I didn't really I don't think I spent as much time on Paradise as I did the others, just because, it is harder to understand. I wouldn't say, so when I say it was it's a commendable representation, that doesn't mean I would rather read it than Peace Like a River or The Last Battle or even Inferno. I just meant as far as his, the way that he was able to sort of force the reader to try to fill in the blanks, which I think that cognitive frustration or dissonance or whatever you want to call it, I think that's what he was trying to convey. I don't know. It's very long. I don't know why it had to be as long as the others. Aren't they all 33 cantos?
I think they're all like the same length, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
I love the medieval, just everything is perfect. Like there's threes.
Yes.
And there's three. It's beautiful.
Right.
I love it.
And I did not, because I was teaching world literature. I was not teaching an entire class on Dante. So they did not read all of them. I had them read 7 cantos from each. So when I taught it, I was sort of trying to encourage them to enjoy the beauty of the language and allow their brains to sort of glance off anything that they sort of understood and not to worry too much about it. Similar to when I tried to teach Kierkegaard. I only tried that 1 year and then I was like, I am not qualified. But anyway, yeah. So really the beauty of the language and sort of the message that this is indescribable is what I would say is commendable.
Yeah, I'll go back to Anthony Esselin here. So again, he has his description in his introduction to Paradise. He just mentioned earlier how a lot of reviewers view Paradise as the most medieval of the three. He says, if medieval means that the Paradise is the least accessible of the three to the modern reader, I concur. It surely is. But it was also the least accessible to the medieval reader. If it means that in Paradise we do not find those time-transcending moments of tragedy or human grief that the Inferno and Purgatory are so justly famous for, again, I concur. And I'm skipping down. I would like to understand it then in this sense. The Paradise is indeed the most medieval of the three canticles in that it most fully embodies the striving of the medieval mind to understand all of reality, material and intellectual, legal and moral and religious, earthly and heavenly, logical and supralogical, as one grand and harmonious whole. That is wonderful in a lot of ways, but as he says earlier in the quotation, doesn't necessarily make for compelling reading.
Right. I agree. That translation was not out when I was teaching, but I would have used that. That would have been good.
One of the reasons I like it is he uses blank verse for the meter, which I think works really well.
Oh, that would be good because it's so strained.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You need something with some flexibility to catch it all, but it's enough of a metrical pattern where you still get some of the poetry of it.
Well, that's good.
But yeah, Evangeline, do you feel as compelled by Thomas Aquinas giving a treatise on virtue as you do by, all the souls being eaten by devils in hell?
I have no comment. I'll leave now. I'm out of my depth.
Yeah. Oh, you would love Inferno, I have to say. I will send you home with it. It's
I have been assigned.
It's pretty good. Yes, you have been assigned. I'm sorry. You can't take the teacher out of the teacher. I don't know.
Yeah, but that, again, and it's just one of those fundamental problems. Like, you have to imagine Dante, you're one of the greatest poets in the history of the world, but you're like, okay, drama, what's the conflict here in Paradise? All of the souls are forever before the face of God. So, he even needs to change the way he does things. Whereas, in Purgatory and Inferno, it can be let's talk about this sinner who represents this sin, and it's very easy. Whereas with the other, it's really hard to just separate them because you need.
Right. Well, for Inferno, each destination is each of the destinations in the circles of hell. He really gets into the symbolism of them, and so they're all very specific to what these people did wrong. And then in Purgatory, it's a temporary place, so there's a journey. But in heaven, all these people are being rewarded for all and they're at their destination. So there's no journey and there's no he doesn't get to dig into any consequence for them doing anything wrong because they're in the good place.
They're in the good
the
place.
real
and
good
they're
place.
Good people. Yeah, the real good place.
So what do you do with that?
People now.
Right. And maybe that's why people think heaven is boring because, it's all good people who are boring.
I was about to say the same thing as, you mentioned the conflict is that they're, all these souls are before the face of God. And we can't even conceive of story that is interesting without conflict.
Right.
Yeah.
And the only times that I've ever tried to depict something like an afterlife or an other world or something beyond this reality, I haven't been able to do so without including an element of danger. And there is an element of danger, obviously. Yeah. There are stakes to being before the face of God.
But if you've been purified from all of your sins,
they're accepted.
Then there isn't.
There's no risk. They're there.
Right. But we have to, approach it through that imperfection and through that, and include that element of danger or fear, maybe because, we always come back to the Aslan quote, it's good, but it's not safe.
Right.
Yeah. So, can we get a step closer to conceiving of heaven with that statement? It's good. Right. I mean, I think we all would agree, we hope that we are safe there, but,
yes. Well, that's why I like the way C.S. Lewis describes it in The Last Battle, because just the whole further up and further in, it's never ending. It's not, you don't land and sit on a cloud and wish for a magazine. It's a journey that really, it's an endlessness of beauty that your mind can never fully hold. Yeah. And so there's never okay, this is it. It's a journey further up and further in, always.
Yeah, I love that idea of not being able to hold it all. To me, that's very exciting.
Right.
concept that's so much more exciting than sitting on a cloud with harp.
We've arrived.
Yeah, we've arrived. Yeah, thinking about the possibility of not being able to.
Right.
To hold everything in my head. Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
No, that's a good way to phrase it. And another thing I think C.S. Lewis does really well is emphasizing the differences that you can have even among the saints who are in heaven. Because obviously Narnia really lends itself well. He brings in all the different characters who are so different from each other back in heaven. And you can see this with, my church tradition has, saints that we recognize. But even if your tradition doesn't, you have holy people in history who you look up to, or holy people in your life. And something that you probably noticed about them is a lot of them are very different from each other. Like there are saints who are big time ascetics, saints who were out in the world, saints who were really happy and laughed all the time. There are saints, of all races, genders, socioeconomic statuses. Like there's a whole huge variety of saints. And that just shows there's lots of different ways to be a holier person. And I think C.S. Lewis gets on this too, where being purified isn't being made into like we're all little androids, we're all exactly the same. It's actually your true self finally coming to the forefront once the muck and mire of your sin and your selfishness and your inward bent is taken away. You can finally become yourself, and yourself is different from everybody else.
Yeah, because even Edmund is still like after the dragon scales, and I know he's not in heaven, he's still on earth, but still when he's changed, he still has Edmund characteristics. They're just purified and made right.
Yeah.
But he's still Edmund. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Like you see, Peter is very different from Edmund. They talk about how Edmund is more of like a serious and quiet person than Peter.
Wait, I just said Edmund. Edmund isn't the one.
I think you meant Eustace.
I meant Eustace.
Oh, sorry. We all got what you were saying. Don't sweat
I know,
it.
but still, that's embarrassing. Edit that out. Thank you.
All right, so we're actually running a little low on time now. So based on all of our conversations, let's say we're writing something. We're writing a play for the next Anselm pub night, and we have to do a portrayal of heaven. What are the elements? Mandy, go. Brainstorm.
I think journey, like that it's not stillness, it's journey. And beauty. Absolutely. Like mind-blowing beauty.
Like a wide lens.
Yes.
I keep thinking of, that far country, and thinking of the elves going into the west, and I think it has to include spaciousness,
yes,
both of like mind and of view,
and actually no limits.
Right, which we can't conceive of, but the shadow of limitless.
You can only hint to it. Like that's I remember when me and Danielle, when we just finished The Good Place, and we're talking about the ending and how, again, I get why they did it. It's not what they're trying to do. But how the ending of the show is just kind of a little depressing. Just this portrayal of the good place. And Danielle had this kind of like, I wish they could portray eternal life as infinitely deep and not just infinitely long. And I think that's a good way to put it. And I think Danielle. She's right. But I don't know how we'd portray that in a work of fiction.
Well, we are human after all.
I don't know. So. I just got this image of like language that changes, like even the letters and the forms of the words changing and going and like deepening and knowing more and meaning more. Maybe that's because I'm a word nerd, and so that's
okay. But yeah, depth and height, not just distance.
It's
not two-dimensional.
Yeah, it's not just a line extending out forever.
Yeah.
Well, and honestly, it's basically like, how would you describe 3 dimensions to a 2-dimensional being? It's the same struggle for us. We're 3-dimensional. That heaven is, I don't know, infinite in dimensional. Thank you. I lost my syllable.
Infinitely dimensional. Does it have dimension?
Oh, dimensionless.
Well, Well, they get this in the book Flatland, which I love.
Are you assigning that to me?
Edwin Abbott, Flatland, A Romance of Many Dimensions.
Are you assigning it to me?
Yes, please.
Okay, good. Let's do that.
So, but it takes place in a two-dimensional world where the main character is a square.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, and then at one part, this visitor comes in from the realm of 3 dimensions.
Oh.
And like touches down into the 2-dimensional world, and the square can't figure it out. Then takes the square up into the 3-dimensional realm. But then Square comes back into 2-dimensional, is trying to explain it to his like triangle and circle comrades, and he can't describe it. And he starts to lose memory. He's like, "It's up, but not north." And it's so good because it's exactly the issue like we're running into right now. It's like our brains can't hold it, so we can sort of gesture vaguely in the direction, but we can't actually describe it.
Well, doesn't Madeline L'Engle do that? And I don't know if it's Wrinkle in Time or one of those sequels, but one of the characters is trying to explain color to an alien race who doesn't have sight. And it's not possible.
Yep.
But we should try anyway.
Have you have you read the one on writing on art?
Oh, Madeline L'Engle's book on writing. Yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name either. Birth by Birth. No, that's it.
No, that's Anna Mott.
Right. Anyway.
I've read it. I can't believe it's Walking on Water.
There you go.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point I'm trying to make. She says, you used to be capable of miracles. You used to be able to walk on water, and you forgot. And that's kind of like, I think we all have this memory of being able to walk on water. And we're like forever trying to like dance around it and figure out, to like reclaim that memory.
The wonder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
G.K. Chesterton said, "We have sinned and grown old, and our Father is younger than we." Talking about the eternal youth of God.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Love it.
I love G.K. Chesterton.
Yep. Well, that's as good a place to end as any, don't you think?
I do.
All right. So, as y'all can probably tell, things are winding down at the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Fire's down to embers. You've polished off your last glass, and all the customers are trundling home. Once again, Believe to See is a podcast of the Anselm Society Arts Guild. Please rate and review us on iTunes, wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.